The last time I laid eyes on my brother Connor, he was standing beneath the gaudy chandelier of our family's country club, a smug grin plastered across his face. The scent of pine needles and forced cheer hung heavy in the air. He clutched the microphone like a weapon, ready to publicly execute my character in front of 40 judgmental relatives. "Well, well, look who finally decided to grace us with her presence," he drawled, his voice dripping with theatrical pity. "My dear older sister, the supposed success story, the tech mogul. Turns out she's been spinning a web of lies for years, hasn't she? Our very own homeless failure." A wave of laughter, sharp and cruel, rippled through the room. My mother's eyes sparkled with triumphant malice. My father nodded, a pre-programmed response honed over years of family dysfunction. I stood frozen in the doorway, the tailored suit I'd painstakingly chosen feeling like a flimsy shield. The fabric, sharp enough to cut glass, offered little protection against the daggers in their eyes. I said nothing, just absorbed the blow. Connor and his infinite cruelty had hired a background check firm to meticulously dismantle the facade I'd so carefully constructed. He planned to unveil the damning report after his toast, a grand finale of humiliation. But 30 minutes later, when that manila folder landed on the impeccably set table, every face went ashen. The triumphant gleam in my mother's eye flickered and died. If you've ever been the family's favorite punching bag, if you've ever fantasized about the perfect, devastating comeback, then buckle up and smash that subscribe button, because this story is about to explode. 6 years of suffocating silence had begun on a deceptively peaceful Christmas Eve in our Albany dining room. The one dominated by the antique oak table forever teetering precariously on its left leg, a constant reminder of the family's inherent instability. Dad, Bruce Brooks, was mid-carve on the roasted turkey, the steam rising like a malevolent spirit, foreshadowing the impending storm. Mom, Diane, passed the gravy boat, her smile stretched thin, a brittle mask as she glanced at Connor, already at 23, radiating the self-satisfied glow of the family golden boy. I was 27, returning home from a coding boot camp that felt increasingly like a dead end. I'd foolishly hoped for a quiet holiday, a brief respite from the relentless pressure. Instead, Dad set down the carving knife, the clatter echoing in the tense silence, and fixed me with a gaze that could freeze hell over. "Valerie," he began, his voice brooking no argument, "Connor is launching his venture fund next month. You'll start as his executive assistant on Monday, 9 to 5. Full benefits." I froze, fork suspended halfway to my mouth. "Dad, I have interviews lined up in the city. Tech firms." "Tech firms," Connor snorted, leaning back in his chair, a dismissive sneer twisting his lips. "You honestly think those trendy startups want someone who barely scraped through community college? Face it, Val, you're not cut out for that world. This family is your safety net." Mom nodded in agreement, swirling the wine in her glass, her eyes glinting with something akin to pity. "Listen to your brother, dear. Without family, you'll end up sleeping under a bridge. This is your lifeline." Her words hit harder than the bitter December wind howling outside. Safety net? More like a gilded cage, a leash designed to keep me tethered to their suffocating expectations. I'd spent the last 2 years scraping by on freelance coding gigs, teaching myself Python in dingy coffee shops, fueled by lukewarm coffee and sheer stubbornness, while Connor coasted through business school, courtesy of Dad's generous donations. Now they wanted me fetching his coffee, managing his schedule, becoming an extension of his already inflated ego. I pushed my plate away, the untouched food suddenly revolting. "I'm not your backup plan." Dad's face hardened, the jovial facade crumbling to reveal the steel beneath. "I'm grateful. After everything we've given you," Connor smirked, reveling in my discomfort. "Yeah, Val, run off to chase your big dreams. See how long you last without us." Something inside me snapped, a fragile thread finally breaking under the relentless strain. I grabbed the linen napkin, crumpled it in my fist, and threw it onto the table with a force that surprised even me. The gravy boat tipped, sending a crimson tide of sauce cascading across the pristine white cloth, resembling nothing so much as spilled blood. Mom gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Dad stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the hardwood floor, the sound like a prelude to war. "That's it," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, a stark contrast to the turmoil raging within. "I'm done." I walked out without my coat, the biting December wind slapping my face as I crossed the snow-dusted lawn. Behind me, Connor yelled something about me regretting it, about crawling back on my hands and knees. I didn't look back, didn't give him the satisfaction. The 40-minute drive to Albany felt like an eternity, long enough to replay every past slight, every perceived failure, every crushing disappointment. By the time I parked outside a rundown co-working space on State Street, my hands were shaking with a potent cocktail of rage and newfound resolve. I had $300 in my checking account, a laptop with a cracked screen, and absolutely no plan. Good enough. That first night, I slept on the office sofa, a scratchy blanket scavenged from the lost and found, offering little comfort. The building manager, a weary-looking man named Mr. Henderson, grudgingly allowed me to stay on the condition that I fix their glitchy booking system. I did, fueled by adrenaline and spite, working until 3 a.m, piecing together code I'd learned from online forums and discarded textbooks. Word spread. A local nonprofit needed help automating their donor tracking. I quoted low, delivered fast. They paid in cash and referred me to the state education department. 6 months in, I rented a tiny studio apartment above a bagel shop. The pervasive smell of onions woke me every dawn, but the rent was cheap and the space was mine. I hired Garrett Lee, a former classmate from the boot camp who'd recently been laid off from a soulless defense contractor. We split equity 50-50, no salaries. Our pitch was simple: government procurement software that was streamlined, scalable, and compliant. The state bit first, awarding us a $250,000 contract to digitize bidding for school supplies. We celebrated with takeout pizza on the floor of our makeshift office. Garrett raised his slice in a mock toast. To not sleeping under bridges? I laughed, but the memories stung. Mom's words echoed in my head, a constant reminder of their low expectations. I pushed harder, fueled by a burning need to prove them wrong. Year 2, we moved to a proper office near the Capitol building. Jenna Kim joined as our first full-time assistant, organizing our chaotic existence into color-coded spreadsheets and meticulously filed folders. Contracts grew: highways, health services, emergency response. I learned to navigate the intricate labyrinth of Albany's bureaucracy, mastered the art of handshakes at stuffy fundraisers and late-night emails to overworked aides. Competitors whispered that I was too young, too female, too inexperienced. I consistently outbid them anyway, fueled by a potent combination of talent and raw determination. By year 4, GovTech employed 30 people. We secured a 7-figure deal with the Transportation Authority, integrating real-time data for snowplow routing and traffic management. Investors circled like vultures, but I fiercely guarded control, refusing to relinquish ownership. No more family handouts, no more strings attached. Connor's Fund launched with much fanfare, splashed across the business section of the local paper. Dad's old factory contacts, Mom's bridge club money, all poured into his grand venture. I saw the press release online, glanced at it for a fleeting moment, then promptly ignored it. My focus remained laser-sharp: code reviews, client demos, and the relentless pursuit of innovation. Last year, we expanded into cybersecurity audits for municipal networks. Jenna flagged a vulnerability in our own system during a routine check. I fixed it myself, fueled by coffee and adrenaline, my fingers flying over the keyboard until dawn. The fix saved a county from a potential breach, preventing a catastrophic data leak. They sent a thank you plaque, a small gesture that meant more than any award. I hung it above my desk, a constant reminder that competence, not blood, had built this. Now, the company occupied 2 entire floors in a renovated warehouse downtown. I had a corner office with a panoramic view of the Hudson River, though I rarely sat still long enough to truly appreciate it. Garrett handled the intricate technical details, Jenna ran operations with ruthless efficiency, and I chased the next contract, the bigger impact, the opportunity to make a real difference. That Christmas Eve 6 years ago felt like a distant, almost surreal nightmare. The naive girl who had stormed out that night had no idea she possessed the strength to build something unbreakable, something entirely her own. But silence has a way of echoing, and some invitations, no matter how unwelcome, possess the power to pull you back, whether you want them to or not. My phone pinged at 2:17 p.m. during a crucial state contract review. The screen flashed a name I hadn't seen in years: Riley Reed. My cousin Riley, the younger one who had transformed her freelance journalism into a full-time quest for scoops across New York and beyond. Her text landed like a devastating headline: Grandpa Harold's back in the hospital. Docs say this Christmas might be his last. Big party at the country club. Come home, Val. He keeps asking for you. I locked the conference room door, the click echoing in the oppressive silence. Riley had always remained on the periphery of the family's petty squabbles, sending generic birthday greetings and forwarding neutral updates from the city. A reporter's inherent instinct for truth made her message impossible to dismiss, impossible to ignore. I minimized the bid document, a $3 million opportunity to revolutionize emergency routing software, and opened my corporate inbox. A newly forwarded email stared back, sent from my own address to nhaley@backgroundchecknyc.com at 1:03 a.m. The subject line, versus Brooks, complete dossier request. Attached were my Q3 expense report, a calendar invite for the governor's infrastructure dinner, and a grainy photo of me leaving the office garage 3 nights ago, the timestamp glaringly clear. The forward traced back to an internal IP address, but the sender field displayed my name. Someone had spoofed my access. I forwarded the entire chain to IT with a single urgent line. Trace now. Urgent. Full audit. Before they could reply, Garrett called, his voice tight with barely suppressed fury. Val, drop everything. We need to talk. Connor just went nuclear. He continued, relaying the information he was privy to. He wired Nolan Hale's firm in Manhattan background specialists with ex-law enforcement ties. Hale is pulling your tax returns, property records, even surveillance shots from our lobby camera. Connor wants a full takedown packet for the party, printed, bound, and distributed, like holiday cards, to the entire guest list. I stood, pacing the length of the plush carpet, the weight of his words settling heavily on my shoulders. Source is an old contact at Hale's office. They're billing it as a family verification project. Connor's exact quote, "Prove she's been lying about the CEO fantasy for years." Riley's message glowed on the second screen, a constant reminder of the impending storm. The invite wasn't random, a genuine desire for familial connection. Connor needed an audience for his grand reveal, and Grandpa's deteriorating condition provided the perfect bait. IT responded within minutes. Spoofed via temporary credential created yesterday. Revoked. No further breach detected. Recommend password reset and MFA enforcement, Garrett added, his voice grim. Hale's thorough. If he digs deep enough, he might hit pay dirt on Connor too. But that's not guaranteed. You're walking into this blind. I weighed the risks, the potential consequences. Stay away, cede control of the narrative to Connor, and let him paint me as a fraud unchallenged. Or show up, confront him head-on, and force his hand in public. Flight to Albany, I texted Jenna, tomorrow morning, first available. Riley replied instantly. I'll pick you up at the airport. Grandpa will be thrilled. He smiled when I told him you might come. I opened a new email to Nolan Hale. No subject line, just, direct meeting tomorrow, your office, 10 a.m. His answer came in under a minute. Confirmed. Come alone. The pieces clicked into place, forming a clear, albeit unsettling picture. Connor was playing offense, confident that he held all the cards. He had no idea that I'd just caught the first glimpse of his own carefully concealed hand. Nolan Hale's office sat shrouded in secrecy behind the imposing facade of the state capitol, the blinds drawn tight against the winter sun, casting long shadows across the bare trees outside. I arrived at 9:57 a.m., the hem of my coat dusted with fresh snow from the short, brisk walk across the plaza. Nolan Hale rose from behind a cluttered metal desk, a single monitor glowing in eerie blue, illuminating the stacks of folders and the coffee mug ringed with persistent stains. Early 40s, close-cropped hair, a tie askew as if he'd been up all night, wrestling with demons of his own. Valerie Brooks, he said, his voice devoid of warmth, motioning to the chair opposite. No handshake, no pleasantries, no small talk. I sat, placing my briefcase carefully on my lap. You know why I'm here, he nodded, unlocking a drawer with a key retrieved from his pocket. Connor paid half up front, 10 grand wired yesterday. Wants the balance at the country club, hard copies handed out like party favors. But I don't deliver half-truths. He placed 2 thick envelopes on the desk, each labeled in stark black marker. First envelope, V. Brooks, verified professional profile. He fanned the pages slowly, revealing the damning evidence that would expose my success, not my failure. Top document. State contract for $50 million over 5 years for integrated government procurement software. My signature in bold blue ink, juxtaposed with the governor's, captured in a photograph from the April signing ceremony on the Capitol steps. Next, property records for the Albany penthouse, purchased outright 2 years ago. Closing statement showing full payment from a business account. Investment summaries detailing diversified holdings in index funds and municipal bonds. Total liquidity north of 8 figures. No outstanding debt beyond a revolving company line of credit at prime -1. Event photos. You on stage at the annual Tech Procurement Summit. Jenna coordinating logistics in the background. Another of Garrett demoing the platform to a roomful of auditors. Nolan tapped the contract copy, his gaze unwavering. Your company's growth trajectory matches every public filing. Revenue up 30% year over year. Client retention, 98%. No red flags in taxes. No liens. No complaints with the state ethics board. I kept my expression neutral, my pulse steady. And the second, he hesitated, his eyes flicking nervously to the door as if checking for eavesdroppers. This one's off the books. Second envelope, Seabrooks. Unauthorized financial transactions. Wire confirmations. 6 separate transfers from his venture capital fund to a Cayman Islands entity, registered under a Shell LLC, then routed back to his personal checking account in Manhattan. Aggregate total, $1.2 million over 14 months. Partner emails attached. One demanding repayment, labeled as consulting fees for strategic advisory. Another threatening legal action if not returned by quarter close. An internal memo from Connor to his CFO, delay external audit until after family holiday event. Use family drama to deflect scrutiny. My fingers traced the wire numbers, each one a nail in his gilded coffin. You're handing this over? Nolan leaned back, the chair creaking under his weight. I have a younger brother. Parents crowned him the golden child, full ride to college on a baseball scholarship, seed money for his first startup. I covered his overdrafts, his bad investments, until he vanished with my retirement fund and left me holding the bag. Connor's treating me like the family fix-it guy. I don't play that role anymore. He pushed both envelopes toward me, the corners crisp and unforgiving. Corners crisp, duplicates. Originals stay in my safe until I decide next steps. You walk into that party knowing exactly what he's holding and what he's hiding. Why burn your client? I asked, securing the envelopes in my briefcase. 2 nights before the party, my inbox lit up at 11:43 p.m. with an email from Ryan, my cousin on mom's side, the family's corporate attorney for trusts, estates, and factory disputes. Subject line, formal notice. Cease interference with Harold. The letterhead read, Legal Group Albany. 3 tightly worded paragraphs laid out the polished threats. Any attempt to disrupt the holiday event or slander Connor would trigger an immediate injunction, restraining order, and civil damages claim. Ryan signed off with the chillingly impersonal, protect the family legacy, stay away. I closed the laptop lid, plunging the hotel room into darkness except for the faint glow of the city filtering through the half-drawn curtains. Ryan had drafted Dad's will updates, Connor's fund partnership agreements, and every factory labor dispute for the past decade, always inflating billable hours and padding retainers. Now he aimed the full weight of the firm directly at me. My phone rang. Dad. I let it vibrate 3 times before answering. Valerie, he growled, the familiar cigar rasp thick in his throat. Ryan's letter is crystal clear. Connor says you're stirring up trouble again, digging up old dirt. Come if you insist on showing your face, but sit in the back corner. No speeches, no scenes. Harold's frail. Don't stress him with your drama. I'm coming for Grandpa, I replied, my voice steady, unwavering. He snorted, a puff of smoke audible over the line. Always the rebel. Connor's fund just closed another round. Investors lining up. You're still tinkering in your garage startup. Don't ruin the night for everyone. Click. The line went dead. Jenna texted seconds later. Albany flight option sent. Earliest departure, 8:15 a.m. tomorrow. I opened the guest list Riley had forwarded earlier that week. 40 confirmed attendees. Key suppliers, charity donors, 2 state senators, the budget director, and the procurement chief. Our highway maintenance bid needed one final signature. A casual conversation over appetizers could seal the deal before the new fiscal year. Grandpa Harold's voice echoed from childhood chess lessons in the den. Endgame matters. Val, position your pieces first. I typed a reply to Ryan. See you there. Let him interpret the tone. Morning coffee with Garrett in the hotel lobby. Steam rising from paper cups. He slid a small USB drive across the table. Encrypted client data backup. If Connor tries to hack the demo during your pitch, switch to this instantly. No downtime. Ryan thinks legal threats scare me, I said, pocketing the drive. Garrett grinned over his espresso. Lawyers bill fear by the hour. You bill results by the contract. Options crystallized in my mind like code compiling. Option 1. Skip the event entirely. Connor wins the narrative unchallenged. Option 2. Attend blind, react to whatever he springs. No preparation, high escalation risk. Option 3. Go fully prepared, control the outcome, turn his stage into mine. Choice 3 locked in. Grandpa deserved FaceTime while he still had the strength. The Senators deserved a direct pitch on efficiency metrics. Connor deserved a mirror held up to his own reflection. Jenna confirmed via text. Flight booked. Private car to hotel upon landing. Riley followed up. Grandpa perked up when I mentioned he might come. Asked if you still play chess. My reply. Tell him the queen's ready to move. The clock hit 7 a.m. sharp. I packed light. One carry-on. A suit pressed and hanging, laptop charged. The air at the country club smelled like pine and roasted chestnuts when I walked in at 7:32 p.m. The foyer chandelier cast a golden light on evergreen garlands draped over mahogany rails. I handed my wool coat to the attendant, the black tailored suit underneath sharp and crease-free. Riley spotted me immediately from a high cocktail table near the bar, her red dress a vibrant splash of color against the muted greens and golds. She waved, a journalist notebook tucked discreetly in her clutch. Val, you made it! She hugged me quickly, her voice low. Grandpa's in the corner booth. He's weak but awake and asking for you every 5 minutes. I nodded. Lead the way. We threaded our way through clusters of relatives and business associates, the murmur of conversation blending with the soft strains of a string quartet playing holiday carols. Grandpa Harold sat propped up with pillows in a velvet-lined booth, an oxygen tube discreetly tucked under his nose. His eyes, still sharp despite his frailty, lit up when he saw me. I knelt beside him, taking his thin, frail hand. Queen's Gambit, he whispered, his voice raspy but amused. Accepted, I replied, squeezing his hand gently. Dad stood nearby, a whiskey neat in hand, nodding to old factory suppliers in tuxedos. Mom fussed with centerpieces on the nearest table, pearls tight at her throat, her smile practiced and brittle. Connor held court by the stone fireplace, surrounded by a semicircle of investors and venture partners. His laugh was loud and confident. He hadn't noticed me yet. Waitstaff circulated with silver trays of crab cakes, miniature beef Wellingtons, and flutes of champagne. I accepted one, the bubbles crisp, and scanned the room for the senators. One was chatting with the state budget director near the dessert table, laden with Yule logs and peppermint bark. Perfect opening. Connor stepped to the podium at the front of the room, tapping the microphone. A sharp feedback squeal cut through the chatter, then silence as he adjusted the settings. Everyone, a quick toast before we sit for dinner. Guest turned, glasses raised. He beamed, holding up a thick folder in his left hand, the cover embossed with the seal of a private investigation firm. Family means everything, he began, his voice projecting with practiced ease, especially when someone drifts far from the truth and needs a gentle reminder of their roots. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Mom smiled encouragingly from her seat. Dad raised his glass higher, his eyes filled with a mixture of pride and anticipation. Connor opened the folder with a flourish. I hired top professionals to verify certain claims that have been floating around. Transparency builds trust, right? Let's share the facts. He passed printed packets down each row. Riley received one from the person beside her, frowned and slid it to me. The cover page read, in bold, stark letters, Valerie Brooks, Background Verification Report. Connor read aloud, pacing the stage with theatrical flair. Page 1, alleged CEO of GovTech Incorporated. Page 2, claimed multi-million-dollar state contracts and luxury assets. He flipped the page dramatically, building suspense. Page 3. His voice caught mid-sentence, a strange, strangled sound. The room fell into a sudden, thick hush. Valerie Brooks, Chief Executive Officer, GovTech. $50 million procurement contract with New York State Department of Administration, Forbes. 30 under 30 technology category selected this year. The microphone slipped from his fingers, clattering hard on the polished hardwood floor. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Color drained from his face, leaving it ghostly under the lights. His eyes locked on the page, unblinking, unable to comprehend the reality before him. Mom's linen napkin crumpled in her fist, her knuckles white with tension. Dad stared at the floor, his glass frozen halfway to his lips, the whiskey untouched. I stood slowly, my own packet open in my hand. The Forbes logo glared back, the official seal and publication date confirming its authenticity. Guests whispered, phones emerging from pockets to search the list online. Riley leaned in, her eyes wide with excitement and disbelief. "You didn't tell me about Forbes." "Surprise," I said, my voice calm, betraying none of the elation surging through me. Connor recovered enough to stammer, his carefully constructed narrative crumbling around him. This changes nothing, the rest of the report proves." But the room buzzed louder, the tide turning irrevocably in my favor. A senator approached me directly, extending his hand. "Ms. Brooks, your routing software demo last quarter was impressive. We should discuss implementation timelines." Another investor near Connor muttered, "Impressed? Forbes? That's elite company." Grandpa Harold chuckled faintly from his booth, the sound wheezy but triumphant. "Checkmate, kid." Connor's planned triumph had evaporated in seconds, the air thick with the sweet taste of reversal. He flipped desperately to the last page of the report, his movements jerky and uncoordinated. The room went dead quiet, the clatter of silverware and polite conversation forgotten, amidst the lingering scent of roasted turkey, cranberry sauce, and cinnamon-spiced mulled wine. His finger trembled on the thick, glossy paper, his eyes widening in raw disbelief as the words sank in. Ryan, positioned 2 tables away near the string quartet stand, where sheet music fluttered slightly in the draft from the vents, lunged forward with surprising speed, snatching the report from Connor's grasp before anyone could react or intervene. "Let me see that," Ryan demanded, his voice sharp and authoritative, cutting through the stunned silence like a gavel striking wood in a packed courtroom. He adjusted his wire-rimmed glasses with one hand, scanned the final section rapidly under the warm glow of the overhead chandeliers, then raised the document high and read aloud, projecting with the practiced cadence of a seasoned litigator addressing a jury in open court. Connor Brooks. Unauthorized transfer of $1.2 million from venture capital fund to personal offshore and domestic accounts. Currently under active Securities and Exchange Commission investigation for embezzlement, securities fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, and potential money laundering violations. Gasps erupted from every corner of the ballroom. Phones that had been raised moments earlier to verify the Forbes mention now lowered in collective shock. Mom dropped her linen napkin entirely, the crisp white fabric pooling on her lap like a flag of surrender. Dad's heavy crystal whiskey glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the polished hardwood floor, amber liquid pooling dark and sticky around his polished loafers, the sharp scent rising to mix with the holiday aromas. The double doors at the far end of the ballroom swung open with deliberate force, the hinges creaking loudly in the sudden vacuum of sound. 2 federal agents in crisp, dark suits entered, badges flashing gold under the swaying chandeliers. SEC Enforcement Division. Connor Brooks, step away from the podium immediately and keep your hands visible. Connor backed up against the wooden backdrop decorated with twinkling fairy lights, his hands raised in a futile defense, palms open in supplication. "This is a mistake, a complete fabrication." Ryan folded the report neatly along its original crease, his face hardened into an expression of cold stone. "I don't defend embezzlers." He turned his back deliberately, walking with measured, unhurried steps to Grandpa Harold's booth at the rear near the emergency exit sign. Harold shook his head slowly, the thin plastic oxygen tube shifting slightly with the motion, his frail fingers tightening on the armrest. "Told you so." The lead agent, a tall woman with a tight bun, approached Connor directly, producing stainless steel handcuffs that glinted coldly under the festive lighting. "You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney." The string quartet, frozen mid-phrase in silent night, let their bows hover motionless on the strings, the unfinished note hanging in the air. Waitstaff froze with silver trays of untouched Yule log slices, and peppermint bark balanced precariously. Guests parted instinctively like a sea, creating a clear path. The second agent, a broad-shouldered man with a crew cut, guided Connor forward, his tuxedo jacket now rumpled at the shoulders, his face ashen and glistening with sudden sweat under the warm lights. I stood, unmoving, near the center aisle, arms relaxed at my sides. The reversal complete and irreversible in the span of a single-page turn. 3 months later, my phone buzzed at 1:12 a.m. blocked number. The penthouse was dark, except for the city glow filtering through the half-closed blinds. I let it ring 4 times, my thumb hovering before answering. "Val, it's Connor," he rasped, his voice thin and cracked like cheap motel ice. "It's me." I sat up in bed, the sheets cool against my skin. "Where are you calling from?" "Motel off Route 9, the one with the flickering neon vacancy sign. They foreclosed on the house last week. The bank took everything. Investors filed a class action suit yesterday. Funds liquidated, partners scattered. I've got nothing left." Silence stretched between us, heavy and suffocating. I could hear distant traffic in his background, a siren wailing somewhere on the interstate, the faint hum of a vending machine. "I need help," he continued, the words tumbling out faster now, laced with desperation. "Just enough to restart seed money. Your family, Val. You owe me that much after everything." I exhaled slowly, trying to keep my voice steady. "I owe you nothing," he pleaded, his desperation rising to a fever pitch. "Come on, blood is thicker. We're siblings. Blood." Loyalty couldn't be bought. That much was clear. My voice, devoid of emotion, echoed in the small space, each word a cold, hard truth. "These are the consequences, Connor, of your own decisions." The finality hung in the air as I severed the connection. No more arguments, no more pleas. Immediately, his number joined the digital graveyard of blocked contacts. I placed the phone face down on the polished nightstand, its dark screen reflecting the turmoil within. Sleep evaded me. Instead, I was left to watch the slow, agonizing creep of dawn paint the ceiling with shades of gray and pale blue, each color a reminder of the situation's grim reality. The morning headlines delivered the final blow, each word a hammer strike. Fallout Securities and Exchange Commission bars Connor from industry for 10 years. The stark declaration was followed by the clinical details. Civil penalties pending, assets frozen, no appeals filed. The legal jargon danced before my eyes, a brutal ballet of justice and consequence. In the kitchen, the aroma of freshly brewed coffee did little to soothe the bitterness that lingered. I poured a cup, the dark liquid swirling like the troubled thoughts in my mind. Standing by the window, I watched the steady, relentless flow of the Hudson River, a constant against the backdrop of my shattered expectations. The lesson, finally, was etched in stone. Kinship, without the bedrock of trust, is a hollow promise, a gilded cage.